Okay. Yes. So yeah, that question is very, very broad because it's always on a case by case basis. Because data even is very broad. In the data field, you have, I mean, if you look at the entire data life cycle, there are persons who maybe they are data engineers, data architect, data scientists, machine learning engineers, AI scientists, researchers, and so on and so forth. Some are in the management side, data governance, and all whatnot. So it really depends on your specialty, right? And the way using the UK as an example, the way the UK visa, you have the tech visa, that's for those in tech, those in digital technology, it's called. There are also some other endorsing bodies like the research, those in research as well. So you have people who maybe they have the tech background or business skills. They can apply business skills within tech. So that could be that you are maybe a growth manager or digital marketer, but you're working in a tech company. So that's also aligned to tech. So anything related to tech, whether you're very technical or you have business skills, right? So for those that have business or the technical skills, like those in data, for example, you'd be considering on one side the technical projects that you do, because you have some evidence that you could use towards your the technical projects. So that could be, for example, if you, let's say you build dashboards, let's say you're a data analyst, you build dashboards, you create those dashboards, you can show some artifacts of your work in data, like those dashboards and reports that you've created. So that can be your technical artifacts that you can use to build your case. You also have some evidence that relates to just how you interact as an expert with the community. So not necessarily maybe somehow tied to your technical skills. Let's say, for example, because of your technical skills, you get invited to speak at technical conferences. So that is an offshoot of your technical skills and experience. But then it transcends into what you're also doing for the community, what you're doing as a result of your expertise to the wider community and the digital technology sector and field. So the things you're doing to advance the digital technology sector. So that could be technical, that could also be non-technical. That could be an offshoot of your technical skills. For example, the speaking engagement or just even mentoring people in that field. So if you think of yourself, because you're not limited to what you're doing within your organization. I've seen some persons who come and the challenge they have, they come for coaching. The challenge they actually have is that they've been working, very, very technical people. They've been working in an organization for years, quite senior, but they struggle with that other element of what they've done beyond the confines of the company. So that's where they struggle. And that's why when at the start I mentioned the global talent before the visa, it's you as global talent. So this is also an opportunity for you to think and evaluate yourself and check, where am I falling short? What are the gaps? And then start to work towards filling those gaps. Yes, so in terms of what you submit, it's going to be very broad. The technical, the non-technical, that's the broader interactions you have with the community. So think of it from that angle. You're going to have many evidence coming from both angles. So for chemical engineering, and you have a PhD, you would be looking, you wouldn't be considering the tech route, obviously, but since you're in engineering, we have endorsing bodies aligned to research and engineering. So you could be looking towards those endorsing bodies And again, you're at an advantage because you're working as a postdoc. So I suppose that you will have a lot of research artifacts. So I'd say, yeah, they're building your case. Yeah, you have to think about your research, whatever you've been doing in your research. That could be, the papers that you have. That could be conferences you've attended, any sort of awards and fellowships you've received. So those can all add up when building your case. But you're at an advantage because you have a PhD and you're already doing a postdoc. So if you have not been actively engaging in research or have some outputs, this is the time to make sure that you are building your portfolio, your research portfolio, and the evidence that you could use to demonstrate that you're an active researcher, because they would want to see that you're contributing to the scientific community. Applying as a promising researcher, what type of evidence? So it's going to be similar to what I answered to Taiwo's question. As a PhD student, you need to have some research artifacts. So do you have papers? Do you have publications? It could be conference, maybe a strong journal. So do you have some kind of a fellowship or awards? So those are the things that you'd be considering as a promising researcher. And you would need, at least you would need someone that can endorse you. That is someone that can write you very good, strong recommendation. One or two persons, but at least one person that will write you a strong recommendation. That strong would mean that the person also has to be an expert in their field, in that research, the area of research that you're working on. Yes, so that's what you would need to put in place. So think of research, publications, some fellowships, and a strong recommendation. Those are, and other things can be added to that, but those are the fundamental ones. No. No,
Okay.
because LinkedIn is not viewed as, I'll call it a reputable publishing. I'm not saying LinkedIn as a company. I mean LinkedIn, because anyone, just like social media, anyone can write something and publish there. So it doesn't go through maybe vetting. It doesn't go through any sort of rigorous editing. So it's just you. You can just share something out of your expertise. So anything on LinkedIn, Medium, those, either they see it as blogs, so just like someone putting something on Twitter as well. So it's social media. It's not viewed as a venue, a major publication media. So that's why it can be used. But if you consider, if it's possible, if you can publish those articles in some of the major media, then yeah, that could help towards building your evidence. It needs to be recent. I mean, you don't want to maybe use something that was written 1 year ago or so. So recent, maybe within the past 3 months.
Okay.
But again, you need to check. Guidelines change quite often, but it should be recent.
Okay.
I remember when I was applying for, when I was doing my Australian application, I had some letters that I had from the UK, but I still had to get updated letters. So you'd have to consider the timing. So it has to be recent. So everything about this application is you are proving something. to the assessors, to people who assess your application. So it's on you to be able to prove that reputable, if it's a relevant, reputable journal, right? And you know, in the world of research, there's so many journals out there. Not all of them are termed reputable. So whatever in your own, like say, field of research is deemed a reputable journal, you will be able to prove that this is reputable by certain metrics. Is it by the impact factor? So you'll be showing that is reputable by the kind of metrics and benchmark that is aligned to your research area. Yeah, but there is, in terms of type, is not, because it's very, very broad. It's going to depend on your research area and what is acceptable as relevant or not, because the people that are going to be looking at this application, they are experts. They are experts in the field, right? So you are the one to demonstrate to them that actually this is reputable, and it's not something you make up. They would know based on what they understand about the field as well. Scholarship award letter enough, or one must provide? I can't advise on the specific evidence to use. Most of it is based on what is most times when we have coaching sessions, we can look at your evidence. So for example, okay, I have this article, I have this write-up published here. If it's not something that is already spelled out by the guideline and it's a gray area, then based on experience and working with candidates, we can advise and recommend, but it's on a case-by-case basis based on looking at what you have and the quality of it. So this is one that it's going to be very specific to the individual at hand. So you're better off actually having someone look at it and they can advise you at least give you some recommendation on that. Okay. Evidence of conference presentations. So you have, for example, let's say you presented at a conference. Do you have an invitation to present at that conference? Were you invited or sent an email to acknowledge that you're going to be presenting at the conference? That's an example of what you can show. Or do you have something, maybe pictures of the actual presentation, yourself doing the presentation? That's also something you could show. If there are some conferences that will publish their proceedings on the website, or they will publish the sessions they were going to have, and your session is there, your name is there as well, that's something you can show. And yes, it could also be that the recommender can be an organizer. An organizer can also write that you actually attended or presented at the conference. That's something as well you could be able to show. Okay, that's a good one. So how many endorsements and evidence do you need? So particularly for UK, of course, AI specialist means you're in tech already. So digital technology sector, you need 10 pieces of evidence. So that's the maximum, and it can be less, but the maximum is 10 pieces of evidence. And the 10 pieces of evidence would be spread across multiple criteria. You have up to 3 criteria. One is mainly on your leadership, then the other 4 can fall into either impact you have, your innovation, the work you do outside your immediate occupation, and finally research. So 2 out of these 4, you have the option to choose. Yes, so speaking for example, you can fit into maybe the leadership, the mandatory criteria. But that's something that, yeah, you need to go more in depth to map what you have, what you've done against the criteria to make sure that it fits well. So that's usually when we do strategy session, it's to map, yes, I have this experience. Sometimes you don't think of it as evidence. I mean, when I was preparing my application at the start, I never thought of the term evidence, right? I just thought of, I have this experience, I've done this, I've done that, I've spoken at this conference, I've mentored people. So I just thought of it as experience, but I also needed to convert those experiences into evidence. And that's the strategy, going from your experience, your story, to evidence-based submission. That's what this application is about. Yes, so you need to be able to map what you have, both technical things you've done, non-technical, into that 10 piece of evidence. Right, okay. Any required number of published articles, they don't state that. So, I mean, from my experience on the kind of guidelines they give around the global talent visa, there are some things that are not mentioned as specific, because to peg a number to certain things, right, you might miss out. I think they do that intentionally because they don't want to put themselves in a rabbit hole or box people, right? Because, for example, let's say in the case of, Abubakar, you might be lacking publication, but maybe there are some other things you have going for you that are strong, right? If someone then focuses on, oh, you don't have enough publication, oh, it has to be 5 and you just have 2, they would miss out on other things, right? So they don't want to box themselves or even box the candidates. And they also understand that people can have strength in some areas. Not everyone is going to be a Nobel Prize winner, right? But they see that this person has a potential because they've done this or that. And some assessors can look at that and say, okay, actually, this person is promising and we can give them a chance to contribute their expertise and grow in their field within the UK. So that number is not stated. For endorsed funder, so you have some funders, I would say, that once you get more like a grant from them, you can apply for the Global Talent Visa with the funding, or with just being on that grant or being on their program or being funded by that body already gives you access. That's already your ticket to applying for endorsements. Whereas just endorsement there are several routes and tracks to getting endorsements. Even in research, if you don't have, maybe you're not coming through some of those funders, you could just go for peer review. That's the default. You can go for peer review. So at least everyone stands a chance if either you're coming from one of the endorsed funders or you just go through peer review and have other experts review your work. Yeah, that's one of the questions we get asked a lot. So exceptional talents and exceptional promise. The talents routes are for, let's just say, people who are not early career. So, and what's the measure of early career? Again, that's debatable, but they look at people who are not within the past 5 years of their career in that sector. It's important to emphasize in that sector because let's say someone has been 20 years post graduation, but within the 20 years, maybe the past 16 years, they spent it on another field altogether. Maybe they were in agriculture, they were in another sector altogether. And then the remaining 4 years, that's 16 plus 4, they then transition into tech. They are still early career in tech, even though they've had 16 years of experience in the agricultural sector, but they've transitioned into tech, the tech sector. So that's early career. But people who are beyond the 5 years, who are not, class has not been early career, would typically apply for the exceptional talent. So that's the clear distinction. And also in the evidence, the burden of proof is higher for exceptional talents, which means you would be expected to show more. So let's say the way it's framed in the guideline, as an exceptional talent, you should have a track record of that evidence. So it's not just one-off. Okay, one-off are spoken at events, but you have a track record in that field. You need to evidence track record or convince them that it's not just one-off hit and run. You have a track record. Whereas promise, the burden of proof is lower. That does not mean that you should not make your application strong. You know, it does not mean that your application should not be strong or should be, okay, I don't have anything. You put up an application as much as possible. You bring your best foot forward, but then the consideration would be milder for someone in promise. So yes, you have done a lot. You show potential and you are less than 5 years or 5 years or less in the sector, and that's, you know, but you have good quality evidence as well. So that doesn't excuse you from having good quality evidence. But again, that's on the side of the guideline, number of years in the field. So let's say for the tech, the arts, it's the number of years you're going to spend on your permanent residency, or number of years you spend before you can apply for permanent residency. So for the exceptional talents, for tech and for arts, you would need to spend 5 years as exceptional promise before you can apply for permanent residency, which we call ILR, indefinite leave to remain, in case you see that as well, ILR, indefinite leave to remain, but it's permanent residency. So that's for exceptional promise. Exceptional talent, 3 years to apply for ILR, but this does not apply for research. It's the same 3 years for promise or talent. So that benefit is not really, at least the last time I checked the guideline, it doesn't really apply in that sense, right? So I wouldn't then call that a benefit for those in research, but this applies for those in tech and those in the arts. Okay, so I would say if you're applying for research through the research routes, if you really want to be on the safe side, if you don't have any concerns about your current visa status, you're not under pressure, you could just wait and get your PhD certificate. Otherwise, if you have other things in place already and you can, you already have the approval email and you're really in a hurry to get it, or circumstances would need you to really apply, but you have other things as well to show. It's not just about having the PhD. I mean, people mistake the research route. They think I must have a PhD. No, some people don't have a PhD and they still get the research route, right? Because if you have done some innovative work to push science forward, some people maybe through patents, some people through research they do in the industry, not necessarily having a PhD, they still get the research route, because it's also called research and innovation. So keep that in mind, that it's not just, oh, okay, I have PhD, so I can now apply, because people get rejected on those grounds. Okay, you have PhD, so what? Right, but you have PhD, you have awards or fellowship, you have publications and all that going, you have strong recommendation that enriches and boosts your application or your chances. Well, it's like I said, it's not just one, they don't look at just one thing. Okay. So I remember when I was applying, and okay, just coming back to the case of PhD, because I applied through the tech routes, even though I was doing a PhD, I was very close to finishing my PhD. So I was thinking, because I didn't find so many persons who were like me in terms of had a similar profile to mine. So the biggest question I had was, should I apply now, or should I wait for my PhD, or should I wait for this publication? So I had a lot of things. I was like, okay, let me perhaps just pause and wait. But as I was waiting, it came to a point where the guideline was going to be updated. Because one thing the tech nation, then the tech roots, they do very well is, if there's going to be upcoming changes, they would inform the public. So we're going to be making these changes. We're going to be updating the guideline, and anyone that submits after that date would be assessed based on this new guideline, right? So if you keep waiting and that time meets you, you're going to be assessed based on the new guideline or the updated guideline. And if that updated guideline is not in your favor, you are hurting your chances, right? So sometimes you're waiting, okay, do I need this? Do I need that? But you might actually just have enough for you to move forward with the application, right? So that's what happened to me. And then I said, no, if I keep waiting for this PhD my certificate to come through, maybe I might lose this opportunity. And that happened to me with the Australian one as well, waiting. But then I had to take the bold step. Okay, I have these other things. The PhD is not there yet, but I have these other things going for me. And I'm just going to, take that bold step. That doesn't mean you should rush things and just submit a low quality application. It's just there are things that you have strengths in some areas. Look at what are your strengths. So that's what, when we speak to people and try to coach people, we look at what are your strengths and what are the weaknesses. Sometimes your strengths will outweigh the weaknesses, and then in such an occasion, could be recommended that you go forward to put up an application. But sometimes your weaknesses are like very, very clear weaknesses you need to address, and then you need to spend some time to work on those weaknesses or to boost your strengths. As an IT professional, if you're interested in the UK, already your sector has differentiated you. So it means you're going to be looking towards the digital technology sector, whether UK, Australia, US, anywhere. So your sector, you have to base it on your sector. And the endorsing body, there's endorsing body related to your sector. So you're going to have to focus on preparing evidence that aligns to your sector in digital technology. But again, because you're already over a decade of experience, you would have to be looking towards the exceptional talent. But again, you have to check that you're eligible to apply. So you really strongly need to check your eligibility based on what you already have, your experience. So turn your experience into evidence. What evidence would map to the experience you have within the IT sector for the past decade?
Okay. So would you address Abubakar's concern with procrastination?
Yeah. I think he was responding to the experience. It happened to me, and funny enough, when I applied for the Australian one, I was the first time I was rejected. Right. So sometimes procrastination can come out of fear, like, okay, I don't want to be rejected. Or even if you've been rejected, it's not a good experience at all. It's not a good experience because sometimes it could make you doubt yourself, like, especially for me that already had the UK ones. Like, I thought it's no brainer. I'm going to get it. And then I got the rejection. And yeah, it made me second guess. Do I want to move forward? Do I want to try again? So it delayed me as well. But then at some point I had to look back at what have I not done properly? How can I re-strategize? And that's how also there are some people we've worked with. In one particular case, I remember this person had been rejected. And in fact, when they showed the list of evidence they submitted, I was praying that maybe a miracle would happen because I already said, this is not going to be accepted, right? But if you get a decision, just come back. We can help you re-strategize, restructure, and rework your evidence. And it happened that they were rejected, and then it came back, and it was almost like a whole overhaul of the first application they did. They then resubmitted. But sometimes it's not just about when we coach people, sometimes it's the emotional element of it. Like, oh, I've been through this rejection. They fear the emotion. So you're dealing with all that and that motivation that they need to carry through and carry on to this next one that comes in. So from my experience, I see procrastination, it can come out of fear. It can come out of, okay, I don't think I'm ready, but it could be reassuring as well to maybe speak to people. There are people who have gotten evidence. There are people who are coaches, and you could maybe get a boost. You could, just like myself, like, okay, why wait longer? Maybe I have this and this going for me. I could give it a shot. I could take the risk. And it was a very good risk to take because I was at the point in the UK where I needed to make a decision. Do I want to go on this other visa that is very limiting, that for several years I've stayed on the student visa that it doesn't count to my permanent residence. So it's almost like I have to start afresh to start counting down. So I was at that point and it was really the best thing that could happen. I thank God, for it coming at that point. And sometimes we jokingly but realistically call it's like a miracle visa. It's like a golden ticket because it just saves you a lot of the stress, worries that many immigrants, already as immigrants, there is a lot you have to deal with. And then adding the pressure of I'm on a visa. What if my employer sacks me tomorrow? What if I get fired? What if all the uncertainties? What if government changes this or that? So it just puts all those uncertainties to rest and you can move on with other priorities you have. Does one need to provide evidence of mentorship? It depends on what you're applying for. So it depends on the route, but the digital technology route has some examples related to mentorship, structured mentoring programs. So yeah, you can, if that's what's the route you're going through, then you could provide, but it needs to be something that is structured and it meets the guideline. No, there's no restriction. You can apply as many times as possible. And I don't know how many persons, if everyone here is UK, is there any anyone that has appetite for Australia? Because I could say something further on the restriction aspect, but no, actually, even on both UK and Australia ones, there you don't have any restriction on how many times you can apply.